innovation, markets, and new firms. My name is Claudia Tapia. I'm the chair of 4AP Council, and I will be your host today. As you may know, 4AP Council is a non-for-profit, European-based research organization that conducts empirical research on topics related to intellectual property, or as we call it, IP, and innovation. And to achieve this, we work closely with a wide variety of academics, experts, IP institutions, organizations, and stakeholders. And we strongly believe that there is a bridge between inventions and entrepreneurship, job creation, and growth. In turn, this drives social and economic prosperity. On our websites, we offer a range of free materials, guidelines, studies, summary of relevant papers, and recording of our webinars, this one included. Moreover, we produce easy-to-digest content for non-IP experts, SMEs, and startups. This is also free of charge. Some examples are interactive graphics and interviews that inspires them. And with this, we hope to assist innovative startups and SMEs to learn how to use IP to grow their businesses. Finally, I'm confident you're more than familiar with the Internet of Things and the fact that more and more things are being connected. And therefore, we realize it has become increasingly important to understand the topic of standardization. And this includes also the rights and obligations of the parties when negotiating licenses for standard essential patents. Today, I would like to bring your attention to 4IP Council's area on the dedicated case law. And this section is now also available in Chinese and Japanese. Without further delay, please allow me to introduce our amazing speaker, Professor Alfonso Gambardella. Professor Gambardella is head of the Department of Management and Technology of Bocconi University in Milan, fellow of the Strategy Management Society, and a member of the Center for Economic and Policy Research in London. A final remark for the audience. Please do not hesitate to use the Q&A tool to submit your questions. You can find it below in the screen. And you can raise your questions anytime during and after the presentations. The questions will be addressed following the presentation. Alfonso, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Claudia, and let me thank the 4IP Council for inviting me for this talk. I am delighted and I really appreciated the invitation. It's an opportunity for me to discuss with you and with the audience about a quite relevant topic. And in my opinion, a topic that actually deserves some additional insights and some additional evaluations, very much for the reason that Claudia was saying. We are seriously considering what are the opportunities of economic growth. We know that innovation is the driver of economic growth, and therefore any institutional instruments and instruments of any kind that can favor innovation and economic growth are important, and they are very important to discuss. Just to give you a sense of where I come from, I have studied the economics and management of innovation for a long time, and I have looked in particular for quite a few years at questions about patents and intellectual properties more generally, but in particular about patents and how actually patents enable innovation and economic growth. I specialize in particular on how patents, the relevance of patents at the firm level, but by looking at the firm level, this is like looking at the microscope on how patents can actually enhance economic opportunities by firms, and then by extension at a broader level. The way I thought of organizing my presentation, it's to focus broadly on the role of patents in our societies. This is an important point because for some reasons that I don't think we need to debate here, patents are a topic that raises a number of issues, questions, considerations, remarks. And sometimes I feel that the discussion about patents is, if not ideological, but at least a discussion in which people have opinions. What I would like to do with this webinar, it's really to restore the problem to its real essence. And what is the problem in its essence? The problem in its essence is that patents are an important tools in our economies for enhancing innovation and economic growth. Of course, this is an instrument that has, creates opportunities. It is also an instrument that needs to be improved in many respects and in many dimensions. But the critical question is not a straight yes or no, a positive or negative vote. The key question is, let's understand the mechanisms of how patents functions in our societies, and let's make an effort to understand and learn what are the best ways to enhance the valuable elements of patents in our societies and reduce the potential undeliberate negative consequences. I think this is the way to frame the question. And it is very important because sometimes the question is actually framed in a different way. It's framed patent yes, patents no. I don't think this is a fruitful way of framing the question. Let me repeat. I think the fruitful way of framing the question is let's understand patents first. And when we understand how patents work, let's discuss how can we enhance the positive feature and how can we improve upon the potentially negative undeliberate consequences. With this framework in mind, I would like to start by providing a general background of what I would like to say. Well, the classical function of patents is, we know, it's the idea of attributing property rights on inventions. Because fortunately or unfortunately, inventions are a very special economic good. It takes a lot of time, cost, and effort to create them. But once we create them, it's actually quite easy to diffuse them, which basically means that those who actually produce the invention have a harder time to keep the inventions within their own realm so that they can actually make investments to improve the invention and obtain returns. And this reduces the incentives to make the invention in the first place if I know that I make a big effort and then in the end I am not going to obtain any return. So the first and foremost reason for patenting is exactly this, to create this incentive. What I think we should also recognize is that as a vibrant scientific community working on the economics and management patent has shown, in fact, patents also have many other functions. And sometimes, intriguingly, these functions increase the diffusion of invention as opposed to reducing the diffusion of invention. So again, we are discussing these very heterogeneous elements. On the one hand, it is an instrument to restrict diffusion in order to create incentives to produce inventions, but the very same instrument has been shown to actually favor diffusion through other channels. And particularly in this discussion, I'm going to focus on 3 channels. Patents have shown to be informative signals of the value of new firms. Patents disclose information that encourage follow-on inventions. Patents help to create transactions in markets for technology. We need to understand better these and many other functions of patents. And in order to do so, we need more detailed analysis of the many issues regarding patents. And particularly, we need to uncover causal effects. What is actually happening under some conditions as opposed to others? Today, there is increasing availability of data to conduct experiments, analysis in order to learn better what actually patents do, and then inform policy based on robust evidence and inform companies based on robust evidence. The big upside is that there is a vibrant and competent scientific community on the economics and management of patents that can actually help in this direction. So the agenda of the next 25 minutes is I would like to provide you with estimates on the value of patent rights, one of the most controversial and relevant issues. Then I would like to show you data on what are the uses of patents, how do companies use patents. Third, I would like to discuss important economic studies and managerial studies that have actually shown the relevance of these other functions of patents. What are the implications? And most importantly, what are the questions they have been able to address? And what are the questions that are still open or that these analyses have actually helped to open? I would then like to conclude by emphasizing the importance of shifting the debate from patents yes or patents no to a debate of let's learn more about what patents do and let's use these lessons based on rigorous scientific studies in order to understand what to do to make patents more helpful for economic growth and possibly remove undeliberate and undesired consequences of this instrument. I am going to cite work made by outstanding scholars in this field, and you can find the full-fledged citations if you're interested in deepening these issues in the papers that you can see on the slides. So let me start with the value of patent rights. Now, the value of patent is one of the most intriguing and relevant questions. And in my experience, I have interacted and heard discussions of many kinds of people asking, even me or others, so what is the value of patent? Can we estimate the value of patents? Well, this is a very hard question to answer. First and foremost, let me make a clarification. Sometimes we confuse the value of patents with the value of the invention. They are two separate issues. The value of patents is the value of owning property rights on an invention. So it's the value of making commercial exploitation for a temporary period of time of this invention in isolation as opposed to in a competitive market. So it is the value on top of the value of the invention. With this clarification in mind, let me clarify that the value of patent rights like the value of many assets, does not have a unique answer. I cannot say, oh, I have a patent in my hands, it is worth 100. This is because the value that is formed in the market depends on many, many things. It depends on the bargaining power of the parties. It depends on the particular condition in which the patent is sold. It depends on how the buyers are seeing the asset as a potential value. Just to make a very simple and straightforward analogy, it is very hard to say what is the value of an apartment, of real estate, because it will, in the end, depend on what is the price that this apartment is going to be sold when it is on the market. Now, you can easily say, well, we could do the same thing on the patent with the patents. Yes, with one important caveat. On average, many more apartments are transacted, and so we have much more experience of what happens on average on real estates than on patents. And this is what makes the evaluation of patents not straightforward. At any rate, with these caveats in mind, long-standing research I conducted with some experienced colleagues like Dietmar Haroff from Munich in particular, Karin Heusel from Munich, and others. We built on work by Mike Scherer at Harvard, who basically tried to estimate the value of patent rights by asking the patent owners or inventors a question like the one that you see in the slides. If you were supposed to sell this patent on the day of grant, what would be the minimum price at which you would actually sell the patent? Now, of course, this is a question that needs many caveats, many provisions, and it's an estimate that the respondent will make. But it is an estimate of what the respondent thinks the value of the asset is. It has error, but it is a good estimate that we can actually make. When we did this analysis, we found that the value of patent rights is extremely skewed. The vast majority of patent is not worth much. A small share of patents is worth a lot. This is a classical skewed distribution, very much like you see in the table. And to give you a sense of what do we mean by a skewed distribution, let me give you the numbers. And without going into the details of the numbers, what is the value of a patent? If you look at the second column here or the third column, which actually look at the value of a single patent, so not just a portfolio of patent, but a single patent, that gives you a good sense. If you look at the column at the center, which is based on estimates of the value of patents in Europe, Israel, and the US, based on a sample of respondents of the kind I've just told you. Essentially, a skewed distribution means that the average value of patents is circa 4.5 million euros. But the median, it's 338,000, which basically means that there are 50% of the patents are worth less than this figure, and 50% of the patents are worth more than this figure. And what is the mode? The mode is what is the most likely value of a patent if I randomly pick one patent out of the all possible patents in societies, where the mode is 1.8 thousand euros. So basically, think of a basket with all the patents. The average value of the patents in this basket is 4.5 million, 4.6 millions, according to these figures. About 50% are more worth than 340,000, and 50% are worth less than 340,000. But if you close your eyes and pick one of these patents randomly, most likely you will get a patent with what that is worth 1.8 thousand euros. I think this gives you a very good idea of what we mean. So this is like saying I have 100 patents in my hand. One is worth 1 million and 99 are worth nearly zero. So this is basically important because it sets a stage of what the value of patent rights is likely to be. If you are concerned that this may be driven by some special sectors, where this table is showing to you that yes, chemicals and pharmaceuticals in particular tends to be areas in which this skewness and these evaluations are particularly significant, but it is true by and large in all the industries. So consumption, mechanical engineering, process engineering, instruments, electrical engineering as macro areas follow pretty much the same patterns. Recent research using financial returns on patents has actually shown very similar figures. In particular, let me cite a study by Kogan and others, which uses patents by US firms between 1926 and 2010, using the financial returns of companies on the day in which the patent is granted. They find an even higher median value than what we found, 3.2 million US dollars in 1982 US dollars, but essentially they find a very similar skewed distributions. And so actually do other studies. So once we established these facts about the value of patent rights, let me now move to another important element for our discussion, which is who are the patent applicants? And also because nowadays we speak a lot about patents by different institutions, universities, governments, which of course play a very, very important role in the invention process. And some of their patents are actually very important and valuable. But let's have things clear in a straight fashion. About more than 2/3 of the patents are held by companies with more than 250 employees. Slightly less than 1/4 are held by SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, and the rest is held by government, universities, and other institutions. So when we talk about patented inventions, we are really talking about firms, and we are talking about particularly large firms, but increasingly small, medium enterprises. So the next step is really to understand what do these companies do with their patents. And this is where we start entering an area where we really need to understand things better. So what these data are showing to us, let me summarize them to you so that you get a sense in a nutshell. Basically, what these data are telling us is that small firms are more likely to use the patents than larger firms. Small firms tend to use, according to these estimates, 77% of their patents, they are actually used for some reason, either internal commercialization or licensing or sale or creation of startups. The same figure actually drops to 56% in large firms. So what do firms do when they use the patents, and what do firms do when they do not use the patents? Well, when firms use the patents, another interesting distinction comes up. Large firms use their patents mostly for internal commercial reasons. Small, medium firms, in particular the smaller firms, use patents mostly, not mostly, but make a large use of patents for licensing. So the active small, medium-sized enterprises are active suppliers in the technology markets as opposed to larger firms. At the same time, research has shown that the amount of technological spillovers created by large companies with their used and unused patents is quite substantial and more important than the spillovers created by smaller firms. Actually, a very famous study by outstanding scholars from Stanford, Harvard, and the London School of Economics have actually shown that there are more technological spillovers created by the large firms through their patents than the restriction in terms of competition that they create because they produce invention. So this study actually shows that the social value of what firms do in producing patented inventions is higher than the private value that they create for themselves. So yes, large firms do not use a large share of their patents, but they are also more likely to create spillovers for societies. So again, this is emphasizing the trade-off that we are facing with patents. This table here shows another interesting element, and it basically shows that the value of patents internally used by large firms is higher than the value of patents that they license. So if a large firm has an important patent, is more likely to use it internally. And this is again natural. Large firms have the downstream commercialization assets to actually use the patents internally. This is not the case for small firms. For small firms, the value of licensed patents is not only equivalent on average to the value of the patents that they use internally, but it is also equivalent on average to the value of patents of the larger firms. So licensing by small firms is actually a very important determinant of the supply of valuable technologies in the market. So let me now emphasize. So what did we show so far? We showed so far that patents are clearly used for protecting inventions, and they are used for protecting inventions by small, medium, and large firms. But even in the process of using patents for protecting inventions, there are interesting diffusion mechanisms. The propensity to license by small firms, the technological spillovers created by large firms. And these are all elements that need further research in order to be understood properly. But there is research that is actually accounting for these phenomena. So I don't want to venture by saying that these are facts, but they are definitely, it is definitely relevant information that we should take into account when we make these analysis. I have highlighted here 3 direct, immediate social functions of patents. First and foremost, research has shown in systematic ways that patents act as signals of value. And in particular, they are particularly valuable for less reputed firms. So if you start a new company and you are relatively unknown, having a patent, having an important patent is taken by investors as important information about your value. The same patent would not be as valuable if people already know you because of other reasons. So as economists would say, the value of patents as signal is more important at the margin. It is more important to make you known as opposed to given that you are known. But this is a very important function because it resolves asymmetric information that you have. You have no clue about whether it's worth investing in this firm or not. What these studies have shown is that if these companies have patents, then some of this asymmetric information is removed. And the logic is also straightforward. It is removed because having a patent basically means that you have gone through a process that has been judged by independent institutions. The other social function of patents, and this is growing research that is started very recently. The question is, well, patents disclose information. But is this disclosure of information enhancing follow-on inventions? I think that one of the most interesting, two very interesting studies have actually shown that this is the case. An interesting study by colleagues at Boston University and Munich has actually shown that whenever the US opened patent libraries during the 1980s and 1990s, there was an increase in patenting 15 miles around the patent library, clearly suggesting that people could go look at the patent and get new ideas for inventions. In a more systematic study, Deepak Egg from New York University and colleagues has actually exploited the American Invention Protection Act that in 1999 required publication of the contents of patents 18 months after filing. They show that the disclosure of patents created by this act enhanced inventions. Further research has actually shown more controversial outcomes. But interestingly, some research has found that in some industries, the follow-on inventions are much more prominent than in others. And this is really opening the box to the question. We need to understand better how the disclosure of information created by patents can actually enhance more inventions in the future. The final element, it's a topic that is particularly dear to me because this is the topic on which I did my PhD thesis along with my colleague and long-standing friend Ashish Arora. We studied markets for technology. What are markets for technology? Well, essentially, markets for technology are markets in which rather than the final product, you sell your invention. And we did our PhD at Stanford, so this was the area where actually a lot of the market for technology was mounting when I was a graduate student. And so it was very natural for us to look into this topic in detail. But one thing that we discovered is that one of the main reasons why it is so hard to sell inventions, it's because the object of the transaction is not clear. The property rights on the object of the transaction is not clear. Try to sell your apartment if you do not own a property rights on it. You don't sell the apartment, you keep it. You prevent others from even watching your apartment. But if you have a property rights on the apartment, you can actually sell it. And if you want to move house, you actually sell your apartment. This is exactly what we found in systematic research over a long period of time. That when you have patents, transaction in technology trades increase, and this is beneficial because on many occasions, the producer of the invention is not the best actor, the best agent to exploit it. And sometimes the users of inventions are not the best producers of the invention. Just to give you a sense of how profound is this concept, this is the notion of efficiency by specialization and division of labor by Adam Smith. He actually started economics as a profession by saying the big source of invention is the division of labor based on specialization. You are good at doing X, I am good at doing Y, we exchange. In innovation, this is very hard to make. Why? Because it is very hard to exchange knowledge that is actually not very easy to codify. Patents, in part, resolve this problem. And there is systematic evidence that this is the case. Just to conclude, what I would like to conclude is this. This webinar has actually emphasized that even though there has been long and systematic research on patents, and we know quite a bit about how patents work, there is still a lot to do in order to understand better what are these implications. And in particular, we need to run data analysis, experiment, ask questions, particularly try to uncover causal relations. We now have a very well-established relation. Companies with more IP are more likely to perform better. But we do not know the causality. We do not know whether it is IP that is causing this, or is it, for instance, that better companies both have high IP and perform better. So we don't know which policy actions we can take. We need more effort, and this is really my concluding slide, to invest in new data, linking data sets, inventors with individual demographic characteristics to understand who are the best inventors. We need research designs. We need to run experiments. If we do this, what will happen with the patents that companies hold? Why we need to do this? We need to do this in order to have a substantial basis of information to make evidence-based management and policy about patents, and move the debate from an ideological debate, yes or no, to a much more fruitful and interesting debate on what can we do to enhance and improve this very important instrument for innovation and economic growth. With this, I would really like to thank everyone for listening to me, and please, happy to discuss questions.
Thank you so much for this great presentation, enlightening presentation. I have already received a few questions, so if you don't mind, let me start with the first one, which says, a good deal of your assessment of the value of patents is based on a survey measure. And the question is, how reliable is it? And are there better ways to measure the value of patents?
Thank you very much for this question. This is a question I kind of hinted at, but I would like, it's actually worth understanding it better. As I said, whenever we talk about assets, it's very hard to make predictions about what is the value of the asset. Typically, we can make estimates of the value of our assets, but these estimates are based on what we observed on the market when this asset is actually bought and sold. The problem with patents is that few patents are actually exchanged on the market, and therefore we do not have good background knowledge to understand how to evaluate the value of patents. And so economists and management scholars have actually devised different ways of doing that. Using surveys is one way to elicit an answer, but of course not the only one, and probably not the best one. There are many other ways. For example, one could have simulations, experiments, better use on actual transactions to understand how these transactions can be held. So I think the straight answer to the question is yes, it is probably not an ideal measure. It's still informative because it is telling you a lot about the value of patents. For example, on the skew distribution of patents, I think the evidence is not controversial. But this is exactly an opportunity to understand how from surveys we can develop new measures and probably combine surveys with other measures. Is again a plea for a deeper understanding of how we can use data and experiment to learn more about patents.
So a kind of strong starting point for it. I have here another question. You mentioned the patent holders leave patents unused. Is it a problem? And someone also asked, do you think there should be policies to enhance the actual use of patents?
This is again a very interesting question. So, and let me clarify, this is not a question that is specific to patents. In my country, there is always a discussion. Oh, there are, I'm sorry if I'm making this parallel with real estates, but it's probably a good parallel to make. In my country, there's always this discussion. Sometimes there is, oh, there are many apartments that are owned but not used. What should we do with them? What can I say? I mean, people have the rights to own apartments and to some extent have the rights to do whatever they want with their apartments. Or similarly, there is a discussion about companies. Why are these companies not doing this rather than that? So I don't see that this is a problem that is idiosyncratic to patents. What I can say about patents is that even if patents are not used, the information in the patent is disclosed. And this is already a potential use of the patent because the information is publicly available. Let me put it this way. There is no public available information on the rooms of unused real estate in my town in Milan. So this is like if all unused apartments in Milan were actually posted somewhere and you could actually browse and see what is in my house that I'm not selling. So you see, when we discuss about unused patents, of course we need to use them more, but let's put things in perspective. These are tools that are not used, but probably available more than other tools that we can think of. Having said this, I think the best way to enhance the use of patents is to encourage markets for technology. The best way to encourage this is I don't think there is enough of a market for inventions. There is still too much the idea that if I make an invention, I have to use it myself. I think we need to go back to Adam Smith, enhance the use of patents by encouraging markets in which we buy and sell patents.
Important remark. I agree. The next question is, how important do you think are the social functions of patents compared to the private function? Is there any trend of the relative importance over time?
Trends, for sure, in the sense that I think that the signaling value of patents, the disclosure of information has become more and more important. The signaling value of patents has become more and more important because we know that increasingly inventions come from smaller firms. I said that the bulk of inventions and patented inventions come from large firms, but increasingly they come from new and young firms, very entrepreneurial firms. And as I said, these are the firms that benefit the most from accreditations that could be given by patents. So the research that I was citing has actually shown that this is important. I think this is becoming more and more important. There is even research that I've not mentioned. Patents are used also as collaterals when companies go and ask for funding to banks. So somehow they are becoming assets that can be used for several different reasons. The second point is that I think that even if some of these other functions have been there for some time, the disclosure function of invention, for example, has become more prominent today because nowadays we can get much better access to the information provided by patents. Today we can analyze with machine learning the text of patent. We can analyze and run analysis with several patents and several data. So my sense is that these functions, the disclosure, the use of patents to understand patterns on how things will work will become more and more important.
Right. The next question is, you emphasize the importance of new data collections and frameworks for patent analysis. Can you elaborate on this point and what will be the benefits for society?
I think this is something that is very dear to me for a few reasons, and I think it should be also for more generally. So let me address the point in the following way. First, I think in data analysis, there is an important distinction. And this important distinction is when we look at data, are we uncovering correlations or are we uncovering causal relations, causes and effects? So correlations is just to say, oh, if you have more IP, you are a more productive company. Causal analysis is an analysis that says, oh, if you have more IP, it is causing your performance. Why is this difference important? It is important for the following reason. Because if I uncover a correlation, you have more IP, you perform better. And this correlation is driven by the fact that your company has excellent employees. Then the action in order to perform better is not necessarily get more IP. The action is get better employees. If instead I show, like some of these studies have shown, that patents causally determine greater funding for entrepreneurial firms because of the visibility that they create, then this has implication for actions. If you are a small firm unknown with a good technology, there is no doubt, patent it. Because apart from the protection, you actually get greater visibility. We do not have enough studies of this kind. We have at best correlational studies. And why is it the case? This is the case because while we have lots of data on patents, these data have not been created to analyze implications of patents. They have been created in order to document patents. I think we should move to a world in which we design the data collection for patents in ways that is amenable to research in which you uncover the causal relations. And why? Because by understanding the causal relations, you also understand which policy actions you can take or which actions companies could take in order to achieve better performance. But to do this, we live in a world where there is digital revolution, lots of data. We need to take advantage of it. And taking advantage of it basically means that we have to design data collections and experiments with these goals in mind. This will inform policy and actions in a significant way.
Thanks, Alfonso. I have received two interesting questions, and I'm going to read them both together because they're bringing two perspectives. So one of them is saying that nowadays there are big superstar firms with large, very large patent portfolios, so small firms cannot go to trial against these big firms. And do you agree with this phenomenon, and how do you expect this to further evolve, and what are the implications to innovation and economic growth? And then we have received another comment which says, today some powerful companies are lobbying against IP. Innovative SMEs cannot compete against large companies without IP. What is your take on this?
I am actually aware of this debate, and I'm not surprised by these two perspectives because I think they are exactly what we see. I think both perspectives are capturing this paradoxical situation in which we see these two extreme and opposite phenomena. So let me say, first and foremost, these are very hard questions to answer. Are very hard questions to answer precisely because they are extremely complicated. And this is exactly why we need more data, more analysis in order to understand what are the implications. It is very hard for me to give an answer to this question other than my opinion, which I will give you. I'm not going to escape this. But let's be clear. I am going to give you my opinion, which is completely different from there is an analysis and there is a vibrant scientific community that is analyzing these questions. And this scientific community is providing you answers that are strongly based on evidence and well-designed experiments. So my opinion is this. My opinion is that yes, there is indeed a hyper growth of some firms. By the way, this hyper growth of some firms has causes other than patents. So the fact that these companies amass a large amount of patents is a consequence of something else that is making these companies grow. So the culprit is not patents. The culprit is that these companies are growing. Once these companies are amassing a large number of patents, it really becomes crucial to understand what these companies do. Now, again, this is my opinion. So not based on systematic evidence as I would like, but my opinion is that, interestingly, some of these companies are using these patents in order to strengthen their protection. But some of these companies are using these patents to actually create more open diffusion. They are making some of their patents available. And there is evidence of situations of this kind as well. But we need to understand better what drives these companies to become more protective or what drives these companies to become more open. And by the way, let me remind you of the study that I was citing earlier. We know that on average, large companies tend to produce more technological spillovers than anyone else in the economic arena. The other side of the problem is, yes, it is true indeed, and it is a confirmation of what I was trying to tell you. Sometimes small companies with great ideas actually can only protect themselves through patents. Because if patents did not help these companies to protect, their ideas could be easily taken away. Or they could even be easily taken away by larger companies and not use them. So I think, again, the issue here is to understand who is who, what is what, and under what conditions. All these elements are possible. At the moment, we cannot make good predictions other than our own opinions.
Thank you. I have another question. This one is from public policy perspective. And it states, do you believe that we increase SME engagement with patents by telling the story of the whole picture you paint of their use, rather than starting from and emphasizing protection? Should the message be secure and use in all these different ways?
I think the straight answer is yes. I mean, in the sense that this is one of the issues. As I said, I did systematic research on markets for technology, and I have actually seen using data that patents make a difference for small firms. And now it's a little, so I need to clarify clearly, patents help these firms also because they protect. But the interesting story is this, that what these patents do is they protect and therefore enable these companies to either sell the technologies, because without patent protection, it would be harder for them to sell. Or, for example, if these companies are acquired, these patents become signals of value. So the straight answer is yes. In the particular case of small, medium enterprises, I think is exactly where we see the many functions of patents playing at the same time and at once. It's not just, oh, I have a patent, I can now protect my ability to commercialize the innovation. Of course, there is that as well. But there is also, oh, I have a patent, I am now happier. I can actually now sell. I have more strategic options. I can sell my technology. Or if I am acquired, I will be more valued. Let me give you just one quick final example. I have studied the laser industry in this respect. And one thing I found with colleagues is that patents enable companies to do the following. Suppose that you have a general purpose technology, a technology that can be applied to many different downstream applications. The classical prescription in strategy 25 years ago was try to get as many commercial exploitations as you can. The implication we have now is no, specialize upstream, become a general specialist. What is a general specialist? Is an oxymoron to say you have the ability to specialize upstream and sell the technology as opposed to the product to many different companies. But in order to do so, someone has to give you rights. to exploit this technology in this way. So this is another important element that should be emphasized in the discussion of SMEs.
Thank you. Next question is, you emphasize the importance of new data collections and frameworks for pattern analysis. Can you elaborate on this point and what would be the benefits for society?
So this is again related to what I was saying earlier. I think, let me make an example. One question that is still very open is, do patents encourage follow-on inventions? There are two forces that go in the opposite direction. One force is the disclosure element, as I said. Because the patent is disclosed, then this encourages follow-on inventions, because you now see things and you have ideas about new stuff that you can develop. But at the same time, this is a disclosure of something that is actually under protection. So it may discourage follow-on inventions because people say, oh, I should not even engage in that because there is a patent and I may actually be asked to pay a lot of royalties for the patent. We do not have a good answer to this question. We do not know which of the two forces is more important. We have a vague idea that there is heterogeneity across industries and across contexts. New data could actually help us, and new experiments could help us to tease out what are the mechanisms that drive one or the other force, and what are the policy actions we can take in order to make sure that while we keep some degree of protection, we actually encourage follow-on inventions based on the disclosure of patents rather than discouraging them. So this is, I think, how we could, in an effective way, use data on patents.
Mm-hmm. I have a question, maybe if you could answer it, try in 1 minute or two, which is the effect of patents on follow-on innovation and the disclosure effect are correlated but different. Can you explain the main difference between the two?
The disclosure is, I read the patents, I analyze the patent with data, I get ideas about other inventions I can make. But I may be discouraged in doing follow-on inventions because once I have information about what this patent does, I have an idea about something else I can do based on this patent, but I may not do it because I am worried that the protection on the previous patent may actually prevent from doing this follow-on invention. So a follow-on invention is a new invention that builds on the invention that on the invention for which the information was disclosed by the previous patent.
Thank you. And I have the feeling we could have continued for hours, but this is now about time to conclude. And I would like to thank you, Alfonso, for sharing all your knowledge and expertise, for being so patiently answering all the questions, and of course, thanks to all of you for attending this webinar and being active with your questions. I hope we could answer them. And later today, you will receive an email inviting you to complete a 1-minute survey about this webinar, and we will be very thankful if you could provide your feedback. And as explained before, a recording of this presentation will be made available on FOREPI Council's website tomorrow. And don't forget to register for the upcoming webinar, which is the Commission New Framework for Standard Essential Patents, with Bowman, Hayden, and Justus Alexander Baron. And we probably have like 30 seconds. So Alfonso, I don't know if you have any final message that you would like to share with the audience.
Well, I think we uncovered many things, but I really think the message is stop this discussion, patents yes, patents no, and let's go inside the black box and understand details.
Sounds like a very good plan. With that, I wish you especially an amazing, great week And thanks a lot for being part of our webinar.
Thank you very much for
further
inviting.
papers from your side and surveys and hopefully more detailed research as you wanted to have.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you very, very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.